Hello and welcome to round 4 of the PowerMaxed Mini Challenge. This weekend coming from Oulton Park's Mini Festival. There's loads of racing to come, and what's more, the sun is shining upon us, just adding to the beauty of this track, which remains a firm favourite amongst competitors and spectators alike. Now, before we get started with the qualifying, the Mini Festival seemed like the perfect place to unveil something new and rather exciting.
This is the third generation of the new Mini, and frankly it's the best iteration so far. It's got a 2-litre engine, improved body shell, lighter, stronger, better looks, everything really going for it. Put a lot of effort into making the car fit in with the Mini brand, and really everything about the car is designed to be as good as it can be at a sensible budget. You know, we don't want to build something that's very expensive because that makes it inaccessible to people.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk through the car a little bit more specifically. You've mentioned the key differences. I have to point first of all down here, the front of the grille. This looks rather spectacular.
Absolutely, bespoke front end, one-piece bumper for quick changes if needs be. The grilles themselves are designed to protect the what's behind more than the old cars did. So yeah, it's a big improvement just in terms of the aesthetics. A good splitter on the front to improve the downforce and improve front end grip.
That was actually a key thing because some photos went online, obviously, of this little taster ones, and a lot of people were commenting on that, saying, "Oh, can I get one for my Mini?" Not sure how practical that would be.
No, I think it might be running a little bit low, and actually is completely designed for the race car, so it won't be available on the road. But nevertheless, it does look good.
So, back to the engine then. Tell us a bit more about this engine, because that's one of the key improvements.
Well, absolutely. On the Gen 2 car, it was a 1.6 turbo, not absolutely BMW technology. This is a brand new, completely BMW engine, 2-litre turbo, delivering 275 horsepower. So it really is a very powerful engine.
Can we have a look?
Well, absolutely.
Go on then.
Frankly, it fills the engine bay completely.
Wow.
And really, it is an incredible bit of technology, this, and working on it has been a pleasure. We could get so much more power if we wanted to, but 275 is a sensible number. It's a step up from the current car, but without being too much of a step. There's still some changes to happen with the car, particularly in relation to some of the induction system, but the intercooler and radiator from Forge, full motorsport specification. There's no road equipment going into that at all.
Absolutely lovely. Now, the gearbox, that's another thing that's very different, isn't it?
It is. I mean, it's a sequential gearbox. It comes from a British company, Quaife Engineering. They are really a specialist in that field. It's a beautiful piece of engineering. Actually, at the moment, we can't even show it to you. It's that top secret. But it is sitting there in the car, but fortunately, it's still very much under wraps.
Okay. And anything else aesthetically that you can tell us about her?
Well, the styling is really designed to replicate the touring car, and it is very much a mini touring car, and the performance of it we're expecting to be nudging in that direction too. And to help with that, we've got a motorsport ECU to maximise reliability, minimise the amount of electrical glitches that we might get. So it's an incredible piece of equipment.
Well, it's obviously her first unveiling here at the Mini Festival in Oulton Park. We're not going to see her in 2014 though, are we?
Certainly not racing in 2014, but it'll definitely be running. We've already had it running on an airfield, and we'll be looking to get it on circuit within the next 3 to 4 weeks probably. And then once we're happy that everything's ironed out, we'll be inviting all of the current challenge drivers to try out the car.
Fantastic. So 2015, we will be welcoming her into the championship.
100%. The cars are already bought, ready and waiting to be built, and we'll be doing that over the next few months.
Exciting news indeed, and what a fabulous car. However, let's turn our attention back to the 2014 championship, and more specifically what's happening right here at Oulton Park, where it is time for qualifying.
Well, being mid-July, of course, torrential rain was forecast, but at least as the car sets out for qualifying, those worries were somewhat calmed, with gorgeous sunshine beating down on the immaculately prepared cars as they lined up in the pit lane at the start of the session. Hamish Brandon fully focused on the task ahead. As the track went green, the cars filed down the pit lane and out onto the electrifying challenge of the Oulton Park International Circuit. Of course, the opening stage of the session given over to warming up tyres, for which there were varying strategies, and for those drivers making their early steps into motorsport, opportunity to really learn the Oulton Park International Circuit. For Shane Stoney, there were no such concerns. He was looking to continue his fine season to date. Likewise, championship leader Luke Cordell. It's Chris Knox, though, who looked to get the power down early, and he set the early benchmark time. But Knox, looking to preserve tyres, wasn't sure how many flying laps he'd be able to put in. Right in car with Knox, you can see just how committed he was through Druids, and a lovely shot there into the rear view mirror. You could see the total focus in Knox's eyes, while other drivers were into the pits. Fettley, Mr. Grace Williams, to Curtin alongside Mark Wakefield to practice on the slipstream effects, becoming very useful for the races a little bit later on in the day. So it was Knox who set the early benchmark time, and then it was up to the others to try and chase it down. Jo Polly Goldin, at least in her efforts, had the advantage of splendid isolation, no traffic surrounding her, perfect conditions with which to set a good lap time. Luke Cordell pushing hard, but he could never get higher up than 5th on the timing sheets and eventually line up on the inside of row 3 for the first of the races. But as ever in the PowerMaxed Mini Challenge, it was an incredibly tightly bunched session, both in the JCW cars and the Cooper class, where the big news was that Shane Stoney was not topping the times. So Chris Knox, his quick lap done, headed into the pits to wait out the session, which had potentially done enough to snatch pole. The Cooper class, it was William Phillips who was at the top of the times, to the surprise of many, as Knox agonisingly watched the clock ticking down to 0. So as Knox was stationary, the action on track continued. Cordell was pounding in the flying laps, it just wasn't quite enough. Luke, a driver who always flies in the races, nonetheless will be pleased to be lining up at the sharp end of the field. Instead, pole position went the way of Neil Newstead by the slenderest of margins. Just 1,000th of a second was his advantage over Chris Russell, with Chris Knox shuffled down to 3rd, but still only 1,500ths of a second off pole. So Newstead was then for JCW pole from Russell and Knox. Henry Dupree an excellent 4th from Cordell. William Phillips usurping Shane Stoney at the top of the Cooper class with Josh Gollin, and Ricky Page completing row 2. So into Parc Fermé, the scrutineering checks a welcome to the Mini Challenge for ex-British Touring Car Championship racer Chris James, William Phillips and Neil Newstead debrief qualifying.
P1 across the line, first time I've seen that being in a Mini, and yeah, no, very, very, very happy with that. I had a chat with Luke and Chris Knox actually just when we was in the Holden area, and they haven't got many tyres, so they only done like 3 or 4 laps literally to look after their tyres. So to me, I think that's bad management. We've been looking after our tyres throughout the season, been listening to Bill Solis, my coach, and yeah, we carried 2 new tyres over from Snetterton, so we're sitting here with 2 new tyres, so we've got 4 new tyres we can carry over. So yeah, very confident. They thought they was going to get it back in the rest of the races because nobody had the tyres, but that isn't the case. We've got 4 tyres. I'm going in even more confident than I was this morning. So,
what an amazing qualifier!
Yeah, I have to admit it's definitely one of my best parts of the season so far. I didn't expect to get pole, to be honest, but I was quick in testing. So to take what I've learned from testing and put it into qualifying, I'm really pleased. I had a massive off on lap 2 down at Cascades, which was a bit of a bummer. It's quite bumpy out there, let's say. But no, yeah, I just got my head down after that and just relaxed, and the lap came to me, hit every corner perfect, and the lap time just came, so really, really pleased.
Luke, after recent victories, obviously the pressure's really on you this weekend.
Yeah, it is, but we were ready for it, but not a great start to the weekend. We had a sensible fault come up in qualifying and couldn't manage to get it cleared, so only managed to get 5th in the end.
What is your plan of action? Because there's 3 races in one day. It's a really packed day. How are you sort of planning? What's your strategy?
We're really looking forward to it. It's the first time we've done 3 races in a day. It's all about getting the car home in the first 2 races, damage-free hopefully. Coming from 5th on the grid, that could prove difficult, but we should be fine.
Qualifying's out of the way, but it's a packed schedule of racing in the PowerMaxed Mini Challenge from Oulton Park. We have 3 races, all to come after the break. Welcome back to Oulton Park for the first race in round 4 of the PowerMaxed Mini Challenge. After a fantastic qualifier for Neil Newstead and also William Phillips, let's go over to Ben Evans for the full grid.
Well, this promises to be quite something. A bumper grid headed then by Neil Newstead and Chris Russell. Chris Knox and Henry Dupree on row 2 from Luke Caudle and Hamish Brandon, then Rob Smith and Lawrence Davey. Kevin O'Connor and Carl Reid complete the JCW runners. Then it's William Phillips and Shane Stoney sharing the Cooper class front row from Josh Gollin and Ricky Page. Then Martin Poole and Simon Walton, Mark Wakefield and Grace Williams. Joe Polly completing the very, very sizable field. This, the inaugural Oulton Park Mini Festival. And away we go for the first of the PowerMaxed Mini Challenge races, and it's a good start from pole position from Neil Newstead, but Chris Knox able to sneak through into 2nd place ahead of Chris Russell as they dart through Old Hall for the first time in car with Luke Caudle as he chases down the avenue in pursuit of Russell on the brakes into Cascades. And it is Neil Newstead who leads the way through the left-hander along Lakeside on towards Island Bend. There's a spin for Simon Walton and Grace Williams gets forced wide through absolutely no fault of her own. A big bumpy ride across the grass for Williams as Oulton will rejoin at the back of the field. Out front, Chris Knox already applying the pressure to Neil Newstead. He looks to the outside at Shell Oil's corner. And then they have the short sprint onto the chicane at Britain's. A little bit of smoke there from Luke Caudle's car as he chases down Chris Russell. Slight slip on the brakes as well there for Caudle. He's out of Britain's, the leading trio, as close as you like over Hilltop and then into the heavy braking zone for Hizzies. Neil Newstead just half a car's length or so towards the inside of the road on the brake into Hizzies. He's making sure that Chris Knox is going to have a tough time of it in terms of fighting his way through. Already that leading trio breaking clear of the rest of the pack as we have a replay of the start from William Phillips' perspective. All the hard work in qualifying undone within metres of the start line because Shane Stoney moves to the lead of the Cooper class. So the JCW runners all flashing through it, and in Kai Luke Caudle, he has definitely got a problem there. He seesaws at the wheel, but all is not as it should be. All is not as Neil Newstead would like it to be either at the front of the pack as they head through Lodge and on to complete the lap with Chris Knox all over his tail. He's forcing Neil Newstead to take the defensive line more often than not into Old Hall. And again, Newstead turns in a fraction of a second earlier than he'd like to have done. Those behind bump across the curves in pursuit. And there's the gap back to Davey. So Luke Caudle heads into the pits. Disappointment then for Caudle, but at least there are 2 further races to come. And the Cooper class, as ever, plenty to enjoy. Gideon Cresswell applies the pressure to Adrian Norman, with Grace Williams recovering from her first lap of ventures in the mix as well. Return to the front of the JCW class and the race overall. And still Chris Knox tucked in right behind Neil Newstead. And this is the PowerMaxed Mini Challenge at its very, very best. The cars, to all intents and purposes, are identical. The driving standards supremely high. No contact, just close bumper-to-bumper racing. Exactly as it should be, and exactly what the fans enjoy watching. That leading trio, they've got to be careful not to slow themselves down too much, because you can see that blue car of Lawrence Davey looming there in 4th position. He's broken clear of Henry Dupree, and that's going to be the really key point here for Chris Knox, is can he get himself up ahead with Neil Newstead before this becomes slightly larger than the 3-car train for the lead of the race. Fortunately, it's race over for Luke Caudle. His car was wheeled back into the garage. It's Chris Russell pursuit of Chris Knox. Still Neil Newstead in the lead of the race, and still hogging the middle of the road. He is determined not to leave a car's width into Lodge. He's making this as difficult as he can for Chris Knox. Meanwhile, in the Cooper class, it is the honour of Ricky Page to be taking the challenge to Shane Stoney. And then we have got William Phillips third in the Cooper class. And as ever in the PowerMaxed Mini Challenge, essentially, it's 2 races in one. The JCW cars and the Cooper class cars as close as you like. Into Cascades then, and Chris Knox looking every which way. I think the real question for me is, can Neil Newstead withstand this pressure through the checkered flag? Ricky Page likewise flying he can to Shane Stoney. Stoney withstanding Page for the time being. Well, that was a slight slide there from Stoney into Cascades, but Ricky Page here, he's caught a little bit because he has got William Phillips in behind him. In fact, he's not behind him, he's right alongside him as they sprint along Lakeside into the left-hander Island Bend, and that might give William Phillips the opportunity to sneak through. Depends how brave they both feel on the brakes. The answer is William Phillips feels very brave, so does Ricky Page. Phillips had the inside line and therefore the place. Through Hizzies, out of Knickerbrook, and once more up over Clay Hill. The Oulton Park circuit is such a roller coaster ride for these drivers, a very busy track as well. The corners coming thick and fast, as do the elevation changes. Neil Newstead and Chris Knox, the focus is solely on the next corner for Chris Russell. Let's stay in touch with this leading duo, because it just opened up a car's length or so as Knox again looks to challenge Newstead into Lodge Corner. This is very clean driving from both of them. Neil Newstead is just making that one defensive manoeuvre into each and every turn. He's making Knox do it the hard way back. Now Chris Knox draws alongside Neil Newstead as they come up over Deer Leak. They're side by side along the start and finish straight and into Oulton. And this is a golden opportunity for Knox, who darts through into Oulton. He takes the lead. But Neil Newstead gets a super exit as they come along the avenue. Newstead able to repass Knox. Frustration there for Chris Knox. May lose out as well to Chris Russell as Knox gets his elbows out through Cascades. Maintained second for the time being. Meanwhile in the Cooper class, Shane Stoney has broken clear of the fight between William Phillips, Josh Gollin and Ricky Page as Phillips bumps across the grass on the Exeter Lodge. Gollin and Page both try to but cannot capitalise. Then all arrive into Oulton. Looking to the inside, Josh Gollin bumps across the curbs, goes absolutely door handle to door handle with William Phillips as the pair of them then propel down the avenue. But you can see that Phillips' rear view mirror there has been knocked into the side of the car as it's 3 wide into Cascades. Oh, and there's contact. Josh Gollin gets turned around and flies across the grass, knocks his front spoiler loose into the bargain. Patrick Mortimer is also another driver in the wars. He heads into the pits. And still the fight between Knox and Newstead continues out front. Meanwhile, Chris James, most recently the British Touring Car Championship, is in pursuit of Henry Dupree and Lawrence Davey, and that fight for fourth is not really at any point in the race lost touch with the tussle for the lead. And to Lodge over Dearly once more. You barely know where to look, do you? Because there is such frenetic action going on pretty much from every single position within the field. Swooping through Oulton. Chris James jinks to the inside of Henry Dupree. Hamish Brandon follows through as well. Rob Smith is the next driver in the queue. It's Ricky Page and William Phillips dispute second place in the Cooper class. Then managed to tail into Oulton. Shane Stoney still leads the way in the Cooper class. Does it reasonably comfortably. So there is Stoney down the avenue. He's got about 8 car lengths or thereabouts of a buffer over Ricky Page, and that in the Cooper class can sometimes feel like an absolute eternity. Oh, and problems there for Henry Dupree. Front left deflation, and so he will be heading into the pits for remedial work. Stoney continues to try and ease clear in the Cooper class. Meanwhile, it is still very, very tight in the JCW class Lawrence Davey, Hamish Brandon and Rob Smith, but wave yellow flags. It's one of the Cooper class cars that's pulled off. Oh, and it's Ricky Page who's in trouble. So Ricky Page out of the race, and he was in line for a podium finish. Meanwhile, a change for the lead that would appear to have stuck as Chris Knox is ahead of Neil Newstead. Chris Russell is still very much with them. Joe Polygoldin does the sensible thing, signals where she's going to move on the trackers. Josh Gollin recovers to the inside of Grace Williams into Oulton and tips Grace Williams around, and she gets fired off into the tyre wall. The car comes to a pretty abrupt stop, but the tyres do their job. More importantly, the Mini Challenge car does its job, and Grace is uninjured but disappointed. So into Lodge Corner then for the final time. It has been a race with not a moment's respite for any of the leading protagonists. It is going to be Chris Knox who comes through to claim the first victory of the day, with second place going the way of Chris Russell and third place to Neil Newstead. Really hard-fought victory that for Chris Knox. One he was quite rightly delighted in celebrating a large mini festival crowd. So look at the results then. So the top 10 in the JCW class: Chris Knox from Chris Russell, Neil Newstead, Lawrence Davey, Hamish Brandon and Rob Smith. Shane Stoney victorious in the Cooper class from Josh Gollin and Martin Poole, and Simon Oulton recovering well to fourth. So applause as the drivers make the first podium of the day.
I got a good start, good enough to got past Will on the start, and then just sort of managed to hold on, but you know, there was 4 cars in a big long train, and then they just started battling a little bit, and it just allowed me to break the toe, and then I think it all kicked off behind me. I'm not really sure what happened. I just remember seeing cars going off and things like that.
Massive thanks to Accelerate Motorsport, Rivervale, Shop Play Leasing, Mintex Spares and my dad's company WESL. We had a cracking race. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought I was going to struggle a little bit because we have only got 2 tyres this weekend, if other competitors have saved from previous things, so we're out of new tyres, but cracking race with Chris and Neil, and I just got Neil coming out of the shell hairpin and sort of held it to the flag.
Luke, that was a pretty tough first race for you. What happened?
Yeah, not a good start to the day at all. Had a really good start off the line, got round turn 1. Chris Callister-Russell left the circuit, rejoined right in front of us, anchored on the brakes, and we had nowhere to go.
So, what's the prognosis for race 2?
Well, we'll be coming from the back now, but it's always our strong rolling start race, so we'll be coming from the back, and we will just push as hard as we can.
An exciting and eventful first race here at Oulton Park, resulting in a change of championship leader. There's a lot of work for Luke Caudle to be doing when he goes out in race number 2. We will see you after the break. Welcome back to the PowerMaxed Mini Challenge from Cheshire's Oulton Park, where we're 1 race down and still 2 to go. Now, we'll be back with the racing in just a moment, but first, one of the favourite features of the Mini Festival is the Grid Walk, which is happening behind me right now. It's a chance for fans to get up close and personal with the cars, the drivers and the grid girls.
Crowds clear the grid. Let's have a look at how they'll line up for race 2. Chris Knox in pole alongside Chris Russell, then it's Chris James, Lawrence Davey from Neil Newstead and Hamish Brandon. In the Cooper class, Shane Stoney takes pole position alongside Martin Poole. Strong row 2, Simon Oulton and Josh Gollin.
Thanks, Ben. So poor Luke Caudle faces a toughie as he attempts to push forward from the back in the JCWs. Anything could happen though. It's a rolling start, so let's go racing.
Pace car peels into the pit lane, which means it's the responsibility of Chris Knox to pace the field. And away we go. And Knox looks to make good an early escape. Lawrence Davey slips through into second place. It's Chris Russell who is the big loser here. Also Neil Newstead is shuffled down in the midfield as they plummet downhill through the avenue into Cascades. And it's Knox from Davey and Russell. And it's Hamish Brandon in 4th, in car with Chris Russell then. Bright blue car of Lawrence Davey just ahead of him. Luke Cawley, you can see, trying to gain ground early on as Davey looks to apply the pressure to Knox as they turn into Shell Oil's hairpin. Knox, though, lets the camber work in his favour as Rob Smith looks to the outside, and he goes side by side with Chris James as they do battle over 5th position. A pair of them sprinting into Britons. Smith to the inside. Ooh, that's going to be a little bit tight over the curbs. They're just trying to still fit 2 cars in. Not quite enough space, and it's Rob Smith who eventually slides across. Some debris goes flying as well, but everybody seems to have got through more or less unscathed as Chris Knox still comes under pressure from Lawrence Davey. Super fighting going on behind. It's Kevin O'Connor, Neil Newstead, Luke Cawdell, all jostle for position, all try and find a little bit of space. Also got Alan Taylor, who's in the thick of that, and it's Taylor with the trim hanging off in the Cooper class. Matt Hammond. It's a grandstand view of Gideon Cresswell, getting a little bit too close for comfort with some of his rivals. Ricky Page also part of that scrap. So it's Knox from Davey and Russell in the JCW class. Chris James going strongly in these early stages up to 5th. His first weekend racing the Mini Challenge in pursuit of Hamish Brandon. As Chris Russell looks to the outside, Lawrence Davey. Davey though turns through Lodge with the inside line. Russell though immediately looks to go alongside as they head over Deerleap and sprint into Oulton. So this is going to be the opportunity here for Chris Russell. Not to the inside on that occasion, Davey covered it. Russell then looks to the outside. Couldn't quite make it stick. Ricky Page and Cresswell having a fine scrap in the Cooper class. They've got William Phillips trying to close up onto their tail as well. Matt Hammond has got the best seat in the house though, so he's directly behind the Dicing, Cresswell and Page. Out front, of course, in the Cooper class, Shane Stoney has rather made good his escape as Cresswell slings it sideways and also a little bit wayward. Matt Hammond carries the momentum. As into the pits comes Rob Smith for a check over. He is waved on his way. Still, the fight continues second place between Davey and Russell, and then likewise the fight for 4th between Hamish Brandon and Chris James. James hopping all over the curbs. And here is Hamish Brandon right in front of us. We're in car with Chris James. James fully focused on the task ahead. Not really challenging to Druids, but as they came into shot, the 2 cars were almost as one, with Chris James pretty much obscured behind Hamish Brandon. That continues as they sprint towards Lodge. Surely though Chris James is going to go through here. He is partially alongside Hamish Brandon well before the braking zone. It gives him the inside line if he can get the car stopped in time, and he does just that. Gains the place, moves into 4th as just ahead there's a challenge ongoing for second place between Lawrence Davey and Chris Russell, and it's the black and blue car of Russell that darts and takes second place away from Lawrence Davey. Davey looks to immediately retaliate and is indeed going to jig through as they plummet out of Oulton down through the avenue and into Cascades. Phillips and Ricky Page run in tandem in the Cooper class. They've still got quite a lot of ground to make up. They've got Martin Poole just on ahead of them. William Phillips has had blistering pace all weekend. Just needs to convert it into a good result in these last 2 races. It's going to be the task for him. Onward into Oulton then. Picks up the pace, picks up the throttle, accelerates on to the avenue. This is actually the circuit that's reasonably narrow. As into the pits comes Luke Cawdell, so problems there for Cawdell, who has had such a good run in the championship to date this year. Well, the fight for second is as close as it has ever been. Chris Russell still right on the tail of Lawrence Davey. Davey, though, knows a thing or two about defensive driving, knows that if he just sticks to the racing line, given how evenly matched the cars in the PowerMaxed Mini Challenge are, it's going to make it very difficult for Russell to find a way past him. And that's exactly what Lawrence Davey is doing for the moment. He is just sticking to the racing line, defending when he needs to, in particular into Lodge, because that is one of the corners where if you can get a good run out of Druids, you can propel yourself to the inside. Lawrence Davey, though, blanks that option for Chris Russell. Then the next thing Davey needs to do is get a good exit from Lodge and do exactly what he's doing, which is force Russell to the outside line as they head on towards Oulton. But I just wonder if Chris Russell's maybe got his nose in front. Indeed he has. So Chris Russell finally able to move up to second, but he did this a lap ago and then ran wide at Oulton, allowed Davey back through. And this time, no such problems for Russell. He gained second place. Now sits off in shooter Chris Knox. Meanwhile, Martin Paul has been caught by William Phillips and Ricky Page. A pair of them. Shoe Paul, it's Phillips is going to take the turn first to challenge into Lodge. I think he may well go through here. Ricky Page also looks to go for a gap which rapidly closes as Martin Paul, not unsurprisingly, swoops across and claims the racing line, and then looks to retaliate and goes mirror to wing mirror with William Phillips as the pair of them over the start and finish line. Paul has got the inside line for Oulton. William Phillips, who may well have the commitment though, he holds on around the outside even as he has to take to the grass. Great drive between the pair of them, no contact thus far. William Phillips though determined not to concede defeat in that fight for position, or when he just about forces his way through there into Cascades. Maybe Martin Paul didn't see him coming quite until he had to take evasive action nonetheless, and Phillips goes through. William Page also gains the position. Simon Oulton and Gideon Cresswell do battle in the Cooper class. They have got the race leader Chris Knox with a fast closing. Chris Russell coming in on their tail. Across the line once more we go. And this thus far has been the perfect Oulton Park Mini Festival in the PowerMaxed Mini Challenge for Chris Knox, because he claimed victory in the first race. He's out front in race 2. As they side through traffic, he's got the opportunity to take advantage in the Cooper class. Shane Stoney once more leading the way. The thing with Shane is he never looks hurried. He is such a smooth driver behind the wheel, and that's often the case in one-mate racing, that a smooth driving style is richly rewarded. On to the last lap then. We're at the furthest extremity of the circuit. It's the long run through Britain's over Hilltop to Hizzies, and then back onto the Foster section of the circuit to go for the race leaders. And therefore the job is far from complete for Chris Knox, particularly as you can see Chris Russell really rather fancies victory in this second race of the day. Through his lot, they have got a little bit of traffic looming ahead of them in the form of Mark Wakefield. He's about to go to Wakefield Trinity here because he's about to be sandwiched by the two JCW runners, who will both try and squeeze past him by the time they arrive into Druids, and that's exactly what happens. Up into third place then we have got Chris James driving supremely well. Final call then into Lodge, and Chris Russell closes onto the tail of Chris Knox. He can't quite find a way through, and therefore, barring disaster, it's going to be victory in the second race of the day at Oulton Park for Chris Knox. He scores the win just from Chris Russell, 0.3 of a second, with Chris James completing the JCW podium. It's more the opportunity to celebrate for Chris Knox. So look then at the final result. If you want to be on the podium in the JCW class, then being called Chris helps. It's Knox from Russell and James, Lawrence Davey a fine fourth from Neil Newstead and Hamish Brandon. In the Cooper class, Shane Stoney winning it from Josh Gollin, and William Phillips a fine third after that charging drive with Ricky Page in fourth. Onto the podium then for Shane Stoney, another victory in the Cooper class. Will he be able to make it a clean sweep in race 3? Same goes for Chris Knox, 2 wins from 2 races.
Chris, really great from 6th to 3rd. You seem pretty pleased with yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been in a race car for 20 months since 2012 with the BTCC, so literally first test yesterday, and to finish on the podium, I would take that every day of the week. Yeah, loved it.
Obviously, you've come from the British Touring Cars. How do you think this series fares for somebody who's preparing to go on to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really well. I say with the NGTC and the touring cars, one make or one set of regs, if you like, one make series here. Very, very hard but fair racing. The new JCW for next year, I think it's going to be not far off on par with the touring cars. So yeah, it's a real good stepping stone. You know, I'd say certainly in line with the Clios, if not ahead to make the step up to British touring cars.
I'm chuffed to come from last back up to 3rd. It's really great, enjoyable day, definitely.
And we've obviously got the reverse grid for race number 3. Do you think you'll be able to take advantage of that?
It's a tough one. Obviously Shane's going to be the one to try and keep him behind me. If I can keep Shane behind me and Josh, I think we'll have a good shot at getting the win.
Yet more disappointment for Luke Caudle with a second DNF this weekend. However, it is nice to see some new faces like Chris James on the podium. We still have one more race to come for you, so we'll see you after the break. Welcome back to the last part of the PowerMaxed Mini Challenge from Oulton Park's Mini Festival. Now, someone who's managed to continuously claw their way back up despite suffering several setbacks this weekend is Grace Williams. Grace, hello. It was looking so good in the first race. You were in third position a lot of the time in the Coopers. What happened?
Yeah, I was so pleased with how I was doing and was really getting on successfully, and yeah, came around the first corner, had an incident which ended pretty nastily. I was completely wiped out and ended up in the tyre wall. The guys here did a great job. I mean, Peak Performance have a real good team around them now, and they did their best, and I was good to go. The only issue I had continuing on into the second race was the power steering. I didn't have any, so that was a new experience.
Yeah. Best of luck to Grace and indeed everyone. Let's go over to Ben Evans now for the final grid of this weekend's PowerMaxed Mini Challenge.
Thanks, Michelle. And this is the reverse grid race, so it should be very entertaining, with Hamish Brandon and Neil Newstead sharing the front row. Clear Lawrence Davey and Chris James, then Chris Russell and Chris Knox. In the Cooper class, Mark Wakefield and Matt Hammond out front. Shane Stoney with an awful lot to do from 6th place, but he is rarely to be deterred. Away we go then. It's a fast start from Knox, but he's boxed in here behind Lawrence Davey. It's also a good start from Chris Russell as they charge towards Old Hall for the first time. It's Hamish Brandon who takes the advantage from Neil Newstead as the rest of the pack swoop around, cleanly through as well, at least in the JCW class. A little bit of bumping in the Cooper class. William Phillips, Mark Wakefield involved in that, as Newstead snatches the advantage as they head around Cascades for the first time. Real fight, though, is the one for third between Chris Russell and Lawrence Davey, the pair of them side by side en route to Island Bend. So Newstead leads the way. Hamish Brandon in second. He'll be looking to score a good podium if he can. Lawrence Davey then consolidates third ahead of the first of the Chris's. It's Russell and then James from Knox. Luke Caudle up into 7th place, just ahead of Rob Smith. And Luke will be looking to score as many championship points as possible in this race to really get his title hunt back on track, because we've only got 3 more meetings to go from Oulton Park. We're at Castle Combe in August, then the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit also in August, and then the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit in mid-September. So Neil Newstead leads the way through as he's for the first time ahead of Brandon and Davey. Chris Knox and Luke Caudle, you just get a sense it's only a matter of time before they're able to charge on up through the pack. We've seen time and time again in the PowerMaxed Mini Challenge that the key in these reverse grid races is to keep the intensity to a minimum in the early stages. Let the race unfold, let the gaps begin to appear, and then make your move. That said, Chris Russell's got a super run out of Druids here and looked briefly to the inside Lawrence Davey. Davey knew that was coming, moved to the inside himself. Hamish Brandon also defending, so got a queue of cars to the inside of the road, and that means the traffic jam forms behind. The leading octet all the way back to Rob Smith, still in close contention. Over the line then, and Newstead just a car length or so clear of Hamish Brandon, no more than that, as they turn through almost like a formation driving team out of Old Hall. Of course, there is an exception to prove the rule. That's Rob Smith, who runs wide. He rejoins through Cascades. Chris James, he was trying to move clear of Chris Russell. All arms and elbows, goes somewhat sideways. He will rejoin, but some way down the JCW class order. So that leads to elevation for Chris Knox and Luke Caudle. As Chris Russell immediately looks to the inside Lawrence Davey into Shell Oil's hairpin. The leaders then emerge out of the cambered right-hander. Have the very short propulsion on towards Britain's. Flick left, right, then left again. And that will then bring them into Hilltop. 6 cars almost running as one, then a slight gap to Rob Smith. Where's the challenge coming from this time round? Hamish Brandon preemptively to the inside. It's come from Lawrence Davey. Chris Russell goes for a move and launches across the curb. Lawrence Davey takes evasive action as Chris Russell rejoins. He's lost a couple of places to Chris Knox and Luke Cornell. He's also probably lost a couple of fillings, I'd suggest, as well. Here's another look at it. If you do know a good chiropractor, send their details on to Chris Russell. A hefty landing and one which tested the suspension to the limits. Now the change comes to second place. The pressure pays on Hamish Brandon. He loses out to Lawrence Davey. He may lose out as well in fairly short order to Chris Knox, who carries the momentum out of Lodge Corner up over Deer Leap as they arrive into Oulton. Knox looking for a gap that was barely there, and he goes to the inside of Hamish Brandon, somehow finds the advantage. Meanwhile, William Phillips in the Cooper class has got that man, Shane Stoney, closing up onto his tail. Stoney moving clear of Josh Gollin, and Gollin says, right, let's work in tandem, let's form a slipstream and catch that man Phillips. So William Phillips leads the Cooper class. Shane Stoney lights the blaze in second place, would like to make it a clean sweep once more. Josh Gollin is perfectly comfortable in that plan. He's going to do all he can to aid in the bet. While Henry Dupree picking his way past Mark Paul. Paulie Goulding also in with that group of cars. At the front of the field, though, we've now got a definitive three-car split. Neil Newstead from Chris Knox, and then Luke Cornell. As Knox looks to the inside, Neil Newstead as they head into Knickerbrook, and Chris Knox snatches the lead, or does he? They climb up over Clay Hill. They're still side by side. The wing mirror is almost kissing. As they arrive into Druids, and Neil Newstead now gets his nose in front. What a brilliant scrap between the pair of them. And Cornell, all the while, doing what Luke does best, watching, poised, ready to move through in the blink of an eye. And we've still got a fair chunk of this race to unfold, and therefore there's no requirement for Luke Cornell to do anything too dramatic too quickly. At least that's the plan at the moment. So over Deer Leap, past the pits and into Oulton. The change for second place. And Luke Cornell has snuck past Chris Knox. It's now Cornell who's going to take his turn to challenge Neil Newstead. Meanwhile, William Phillips is steadily slipping down the Cooper class order. That's Mark Wakefield, who elevates himself past Phillips. Matt Hammond is the next in the queue. So Williams evidently had a bit of a problem. Matt Hammond looking to challenge as they go over Deer Leap. Hammond to the outside into Druids. William Phillips to the inside line. Phillips should be able to hold on because Druids is such a tricky corner. The camber falls away from you just as you clip the apex. You then sort of pick it up again just for the second part of the corner, and then it falls away from you once more. While you focus on the exit so you can get a good position into Lodge. But there's no change in the order of that trio through Lodge. There might be on the exit though, as William Phillips looks to get on to terms with Mark Wakefield. Meanwhile, the leaders are making progress. They are sidling now through the Cooper class runners. Chris Knox has found a way back ahead of Luke Cornell once more, but you could still easily throw a generously sized duvet over the three leaders because it's about 4.5 mini lengths covering 3 cars, and we go into the last lap. And what a finale in prospect. The final lap of the Oulton Park Mini Festival in the PowerMaxed Mini Challenge. This is what the fans have flocked to the Cheshire Circuit to enjoy, and they are being treated to quite something. But we have got this ferocious fight here between Mark Wakefield, William Phillips and Matt Hammond. Then we've got Gideon Cresswell, and then we have got the 3 leaders. You almost want the Ride of the Valkyries to be playing as they come over the brow into Island Bend. Neil Newstead through the left-hander. Chris Knox in pursuit. He's still got, though, 2/3 of the lap remaining, but it's all the run to home from here on in. Britain's you can't really overtake. Instead, it's all about getting that exit from Britain's to possibly challenge into his lot. As long as you don't do Chris Russell and launch yourself across the curbs at that point. So they come up over Hilltop. And we've got a problem there for Gideon Cresswell. He is smoking a little bit. We've also got a problem for Luke Caudle, who slows at the back of the picture. So Luke Caudle from third drops out, and contact between Cresswell and Neil Newstead. Contact again, Cresswell onto two wheels. Newstead goes sideways, and Chris Knox can't quite capitalise. Busy taking evasive action. Luke Caudle pulls off at the top of your picture. Disaster for Caudle. Disaster for Gideon Cresswell. As still William Phillips, Matt Hamden, Mark Wakefield do battle and contact. Oh, and off into the gravel trap goes Mark Wakefield. William Phillips gets promoted through all of that. This the fight for third place in the Cooper class, and the leaders are arriving onto the scene as well. We've got just one corner to go, and quite frankly, anything could happen. Chris Knox goes sideways on the brakes, trying to overhaul Neil Newstead, and it means that up the inside, Lawrence Davey finds the space as Knox bumps and bores across the grass. They charge over Deer Leap on towards the checkered flag, and it is victory just for Neil Newstead. Second place to Lawrence Davey, and third place for Chris Knox. And I am struggling to think of a more dramatic last lap in any class of racing that we have seen in the 2014 season. So look then at the final results. Victory for Neil Newstead, second place Lawrence Davey, third place Chris Knox from Hamish Brandon and Rob Smith. Wretched luck for Luke Caudle for that late retirement. Shane Stoney sweeping the Cooper class from Josh Gollin, and William Phillips completing the podium after that manic last lap. So trophy, handshakes and presentations onto the top step of the rostrum for Neil Newstead. Time for the champagne on the rostrum.
His first win. Absolutely amazing race. I had a flying start, held the corner into turn one, and then I pulled away. I see Chris Knox come through the pack. He was catching me very quickly, but there's no way I was going to let him past. I just had to hold position. I knew I had the time in the car. The car performed absolutely amazing, and then to come across that line P1, absolutely fantastic. Very happy.
So in terms of the championship, then leaving Oulton Park, Chris Knox leads the JCW class from Neil Newstead and Lawrence Davey. Luke Caudle slides to fourth after that disappointing weekend. Shane Stoney, meanwhile, dominates the Cooper class from Josh Gollin and Ricky Page.
What a day of action. Admittedly, not the most successful of weekends for Luke Caudle, but Chris Knox taking 2 wins and the championship lead, and a storming finish there for Neil Newstead in the final race. Possibly the best race so far this season. That's it from Oulton Park. Don't forget, you can keep up to date with all things Mini Challenge on our website, also on our Facebook page, and of course Twitter. In the meantime, take care of yourselves. We'll see you for round 5 at Castle Combe.